paldies, ka atnācāt. Mums ir liels prieks jūs visus šeit redzēt un sagaidīt. Un ļoti ticam un ceram, ka šīs dienas iegūtās zināšanas jums noderēs. Un, ja mazliet par Rodlu, tad Rodlu partneri ir Vācu izcelsmes starptautiskas konsultāciju uzņēmums. Un Baltijā mēs esam jau 25 gadus, un šogad svinot savu jubileju, esam nolēmuši arī mūsu klientiem un sadarbības partneriem un topošajiem klientiem arī piedāvāt iespēju uzzināt kaut ko vairāk par citu valstu nodokļu labirintiem, ne tikai Latvijas. Tāpēc mēs nolēmām un kopā ar NMS fórumu esam pie jums atveduši savus kolēģus no Lietuvas, no Igaunijas un arī no Vācijas. Mēs sāksim ar Lietuvu, un mans kolēģis Mantas Mališauskas ir mūsu nodokļu konsultants un speciālists Peļņas birojā, un dosim vārdu Mantasam. Paldies!
Thank you, Alina. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mantas Mališauskas, and I'm a tax lawyer. I've been working in the tax field for more than 5 years. I've been consulting businesses entering Lithuania in both indirect and direct taxes. Therefore, I'm happy today to share my experience and answer the questions you might have. Okay, is it good now? Okay, thank you. First of all, maybe I'd like to meet with you and ask you a few questions. First of all, maybe how many companies now have establishments in Lithuania? Are there such companies? Are there representatives of that? Okay. And are there some companies that want to open a branch or want to open a new company in Lithuania? There are a few. Okay, so apparently everything will be relevant in this case. Also, some of your companies probably have employees in Lithuania, right, at the moment. So, okay, so we will have plenty of topics to cover. And if you have questions, you can ask me whenever you feel that you would like to do that. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. So we will cover in general the Lithuanian corporate landscape in the beginning, then we will go to basically cover how to establish a business in Lithuania. Then it's also very important to cover some topics that relates to employees. Then we will cover taxation, and at the end we will focus on the tax reform, which is now coming into force from 2019. A few things to mention about the relationship between Latvia and Lithuania and its business is that what's interesting is that Latvia is number 4 importer of goods and services in Lithuania. 7.2% of all imports come from Latvia to Lithuania, which is quite a generous piece of the pie. And import from Latvia is increasing, so this means that Lithuanians are open to buy Latvian services and Latvian goods, and the change between 2017 and 2016 was 50 million euros, which is quite a good amount. The Lithuanian market itself is 2.9 million people. Every day we're counting people leaving, but we also expecting more people to come back. Probably it's the same in Latvia. Average monthly salary is around 800 euros. What should be mentioned is that if you are in the region, not in the capital Vilnius, you might hire someone at a lower wage, but at the same time it would be harder to find someone. And in the capital, of course, the salaries are higher, but it's easier to find labor. It's same size as Latvia. In Vilnius, we have 600,000 people. Maybe there are more people in the winter when all the students are in. And we only have 99 kilometers of coast, which is very sad comparing to what you have here in Latvia. Moving to our main topic, there are a few forms of business in Lithuania that you could do. Here are the main ones. One of them is a small partnership, which is usually suited for very small businesses that don't really expect to grow, that are more maybe family businesses, and well, the main reason why you could choose this type of establishment is there is no capital required, basically. But then when it starts to legal regulation of this establishment, it's very tricky because it's always changing, and then there is big uncertainty. It is taxed differently. It's basically, if you are international business, we don't recommend this type of partnership. It might look attractive at first sight, but then if, for example, you would like to sell shares at the end, or you would like to transfer this small partnership, it might get tricky. So the other form of business is UAB, simply said same as SIA. It is a limited liability company, consisting of shares up to 250 shareholders, and this type of establishment is the most popular. 70% of all establishments are UABs, and as you can see from this slide, and there are quite high number of these small partnerships, but most of them are already inactive, and as I said, we don't recommend it. The other is AB, which is for public liability company, which might get listed in the stock exchange, but usually only it's very suited for quite huge businesses. Some numbers as well. 81% out of all legal entities have only 1 to 9 employees, so most of these companies are quite small. If we look to the statistics of business opened and closed in the recent years, we would see quite normal numbers that basically every second business closes down in a couple of years. But comparing to the amount of businesses new businesses is really increasing, and at the same time they shut down quite quickly. So it's natural, I think. And basically, when you are choosing the form of business that you want to have, I think you should also consider about the risk, first of all, that the company might take, also the activity that the company will do, maybe the volume of the transactions that the company will have. Also about you should also think about the future, what you expect the company to become in 10 or 20 years. Other form of doing business in Lithuania is basically not establishing a separate entity and act as a, let's say, Latvian company. This is also naturally available. For example, you can establish a branch which is not considered as a distinct entity from let's say, Latvian company. The liability of the branch is the liability of let's say, Latvian company. The other and the branch actually it can fully act as quite a normal Lithuanian company. Other type of doing business in Lithuania is a representative office. So if you are considering to have, let's say, only marketing activities in Lithuania, this might be a good choice for you. But it is not suited to cover the commercial activities of the entity. So if there is only like promotional activities, so representative office could be opened. It's much easier to do it. You don't need any capital, anything. You just need to register it as a representative office, and that's it. Other type of doing business in Lithuania is permanent establishment. Maybe some of you are quite familiar with this kind of form of business. It is also from legal perspective, it is not considered as a separate entity, but from tax perspective, it might be considered a separate entity, let's say for corporate income tax purposes, where you have to distinguish the permanent establishment from the local company and, let's say, allocate the profits respectively. What is not mentioned here is also having just a VAT registration in Lithuania, which let's say if you don't have an office in Lithuania, if you don't have a warehouse, if you just buy goods and, let's say, stock them in Lithuania and then export those goods or supply them somewhere else, it's enough for you just to have a VAT registration, and this is it. And also if you have no employees. Okay. And there were not so much recent developments, but what has changed in the recent years is that we have opened like a science or business valleys. The tech hubs are opening that quite attracts foreign investors to come and well, you know, it's I guess you have the same with all these startups. Also, we now have very beneficial treatment for companies established in industrial parks, such as free economic zones. I will talk about this a bit later. What also is quite important is that in Lithuania we have, in Vilnius in particular, we have quite a big number of shared service centers that have international companies have came to Lithuania, opened their shared service centers, hired 4,000 employees each, paying quite generous salaries. This is why it has raised, the usage of goods. All the cafes are full, and it seems that it's quite good time now to, let's say, do some business in Lithuania that might actually service these shared service centers. Yep. So this is a short overview of Lithuania, the corporate landscape, and now we can move on to how is this with establishing business in Lithuania. Establishing business in Lithuania is rather easy. It might take up to from 2 weeks, I think, to 2 months. No, 2 weeks to 1 month. You can if you're lucky, it might go even faster. But there are a few things that have to be maybe mentioned with respect to the foreign entity, and that are most important, let's say, is that you will need some legal assistance in any way, because you have to prepare the founding documents, open a cumulative bank account in the bank. So you need someone basically to physically go there. Then the documents has to be notarized at the notary office. Here are the regular costs of this service. Also, you have to register this company, and at the very end, what is also very important, if you want to open the kind of payment account in the bank, the regular account that will allow you to do the payments and accept the money, the director of the company will probably have to come to Lithuania and go to the bank. Or some authorized person. The documents that are required for establishing a subsidiary or legal entity in Lithuania is the extract from commercial register from Latvia, also articles of association of Latvian company, a copy of financial statement, and all these documents should be translated to Lithuanian language. But what is good between Lithuania and Estonia and Latvia is that in Lithuania we don't need these documents get apostilled. So we accept the documents that are issued by Latvian authorities without further authorization of the notary. Yes, it's a must. And also it's not enough that it would be translated by let's say Google Translate. It should be a professional translation with a confirmed expert. What is also important and maybe different from other countries is that in Lithuania there has to be a director, managing director of the company, even if it's the subsidiary of a foreign entity. The director has to be registered as an employee. So there has to be employment agreement made with the managing director. It has to be registered in our social security system, and the managing director has to receive the salary. It doesn't matter how long, let's say how many hours he works every month, but he has to be registered and he has to be employed. Okay. So this is basically it. I mean, I don't know if you have any questions about the establishment. You can ask now, but it's.
I think they have the same system in Latvia.
Yeah, similar system in Latvia, right?
Have you problems? I'm from Latvian State Revenue Service, and I have a question. Have you some problems with fictitious legal person to establish some company in Lithuania?
Okay, so the question is whether there are fictitious companies establishing in Lithuania, right? Let's say
With
for
foreign legal person from Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Russia, Ukraine.
So for these,
It's difficult to establish a company in Lithuania for them.
it is difficult.
Huh?
It is difficult because in order for them to become, let's say, okay, so in order for them to establish a company, they need to come and be as a founder,
Personally.
as a director,
As a director,
personally,
personally.
and they need to in order to do that, they need to get a residence, and
They need to get residence in
Yes.
Lithuania.
yeah, and for this reason, they need to present a kind of business plan, and they need to
That's
prove
nice.
that they are real. They have capital that they will invest, and this is sometimes it's even too difficult that like normal entrepreneurs from Ukraine have it's too difficult for them to sometimes to let's
Prove
say
capital?
yeah, to prove capital, and they're like, you know, they're most of them, they are from fintech companies, and they are like creating games and our authorities, they don't understand sometimes how they can make money from creating games, and so it's sometimes it is a bit hilarious, but it's but yeah, answering your question, it's not that easy for well, when you come from Latvia and you are EU resident, it's much more easier.
Thank you very much.
Maybe Mike?
Do you really need to be physically like in Lithuania? Or for instance, if the person is from France and from Latvia or from Scandinavian countries, if they're opening business in Lithuania, do they need to physically be present in Lithuania for this period? Like,
They need this for opening a bank account.
that's all.
Well, without bank account, basically you cannot operate.
No, I mean like,
About just opening, like if the French company wants to open the UAB, or the French resident wants to open the UAB in Lithuania, yeah, he most likely have to come.
and then stay there.
No, not
For-
necessarily.
Okay,
Not necessarily.
just establish.
Just establish and go away. If you're from European Union,
Yeah, you can work offline.
you should prove capital, you should prove your business plan.
You should, yeah. If you're from Russia, you are have problems.
I have a question. What about registration of tax? It's simultaneously with registration of the company, or it's separate process?
Thank you for the question. It's a very good question, because registration for tax purposes is much easier, and especially what has to be mentioned about a branch, right? If you are registering a branch,
Maybe about VAT,
uh,
tax registration.
I will talk about this too. So if you are registering a branch, you register it in the company registry as a branch of a foreign entity. You get a number, like a fiscal number, but also you need to register for tax purposes. So it's another application that you have to submit. Provide similar documents. It's just that it takes less time, and it costs nothing. VAT registration, I will talk about it later in the slides. So we had a change in our employment law. It was 1.5 years ago, but still it is quite recent news for us, and maybe some of you that have employees will be interested in this information. So basically, it became a bit more liberal and more favorable for employer. It is a bit easier maybe to fire a person. They have shortened the notice periods. If it's let's say yeah, well, this you can see, but what else is important maybe that I would like to mention is that agreement of non-compete. This means that when the employee is working in your company, and you make with him an agreement that he is not allowed to do similar activities, or to work for someone else, or to engage in any other activities apart from his work, then according to the new labor code, your employee is entitled to the compensation, which shall be not less than 40% of average monthly salary. This will be around 600 euros, let's say. So if you have such provisions with your employees, I think you should maybe reconsider, and maybe just or double check it if there are some provisions in the contract, because later on you might get in trouble. The problem is also in Lithuania that there are no case law about this new provision. So it's still, we still don't know how it's going to be regulated, and how if the employees will use it to, let's say, claim some money from employers. So it is applicable also when the employee is employed, and also at the same time if, let's say, you require the employee not to work or not to compete after he leaves the work. So this is something quite important. Yeah.
During the time of non-competing, the employer shall pay to the employee compensation. What means that if I'm working in the bank and I'm not allowed to work in the other bank like next 2 years, I must receive compensation from previous employer of 40% of.
Not less than that.
Not less than.
You may receive more.
Yeah. Okay. It's not limited, like how much more. 100%, it's fine as well, right? And 40% of employees average monthly salary of my monthly salary, or of in average in Lithuania. My. Okay.
Yeah. Employee of your.
So I can do nothing for 2 years, and I'm receiving compensation for this.
Yes, and it's.
I think I shall go to work to Lithuania.
You can stay in Latvia as well. It is the same in Latvia, that you can receive remuneration for non-compete period if your employer agrees to that.
There are also a few more options for labor agreements. Let's say if before that the short-term contracts were limited, I think, to 3 months or 1 month. Now you can agree, let's say, on 3 years contract with your employee, say, and then after that 3 years, that the labor agreement just ceased to exist, and that's it. So. Or let's say you know that you have a certain project in Latvia, and you want an employee until that project is over, and you can agree on this. So you will not need to fire the employee at the end of your project. It's just that and fire and pay the compensation. It means that you end the project and the contract stops. So the minimum salary that has to be shown on the labor agreement now from 2019 will be 555 euros. And interesting thing that it could only be paid to unskilled jobs. So if then there are, of course, discussions what is skilled and what is unskilled, but yeah, well, if you have no education and your work does not include some decision making and blah blah blah, so it might be considered as unskilled. But if you increase the minimum salary by €1, then it's okay. So also there are more stricter rules about the overtime. So for overtime, the payment has to be not less than the coefficient is 1.5. The working week is 40 hours. And what's over it, it has to be subject to this coefficient. If it's let's say if it is a like a how is it called, celebration day, state holiday, yeah, bank holiday, then the coefficient is 2. And if it's overtime during the bank holiday, it's 2.5. So it's quite good. Even though including overtime, there are some limitations that the job could not be more than 60 hours a week. So then if this is more, the employer might get some penalties. Okay, and annual leave. Yeah, every employee is entitled to the annual leave, and this is 20 working days per year for most of the employees. Yeah. Okay, so that's pretty much it about employees, and now I think we can move to our main topic that everyone loves. So it's taxation. Lithuania is quite traditional tax jurisdiction. We have direct taxes and we have indirect taxes. Our corporate income tax is also very traditional. I think it's similar than what you have that you used to have before. So our simply said, the profits of the company are subject to 15% corporate income tax. So you take the revenue, you take out the expenses, and you get the profit, and you tax it at the end of the year, one time, and that's it. Value-added tax, VAT is 21% standard rate. It's all the regulations are very similar as in Latvia because it's harmonized in all the European Union. Our personal income tax now is subject to reform. So if now, let's say in 2018, it's still the rate is 15%. It will become 20 from 2019. We will talk about it a bit later. We also have excise duties that that are keep rising every year. Recently, our government raised the excise duties quite significantly for alcohol, and then you could see a lot of Lithuanian people coming to Bauska, buying alcohol in the weekends. It's true, and there even I know that in the south of Lithuania there is this bus which collects people and brings them to Latvia to do some shopping in Vinoteka. Social security is also quite major tax that every employee has to pay. Also, we have this pollution taxes and many more. This is only the main ones. I just collected. So as I just mentioned, the corporate income tax regular rate is 15%. It has to be paid until the 6th month of the following year. So if your fiscal year is a calendar year, it will be the 15th day of June. But if your fiscal year is other than the calendar year, it's gonna be you will calculate it yourself. So I mean, in Lithuania there is an option you can choose to apply other fiscal year than the calendar year for corporate income tax. So basically what you do, you calculate your turnover during the year, you deduct the allowable expenses, and then you kind of see your taxable profit. You prepare the SIT return and then you submit it. What is also needs to be mentioned that there is other rate of 5%. It is only applicable to the companies that has a turnover lower than 300,000 euros. So micro companies are entitled to 5% corporate income tax. Not only this, there are some companies that are subject to 0% corporate income tax, and these are the companies established in free economic zone. And I will also talk about it a bit later. So let's say if Latvian company open a branch or open a subsidiary in Lithuania, the income of this Latvian subsidiary will be considered as Lithuanian sourced income. I mean that Lithuanian tax authorities will not consider the income gained in Latvia as an object to Lithuanian corporate income tax. So what is also important is that all business-related expenses are treated as allowable deductions. Maybe just important to mention that it has to be related to the activity, and during the tax audit, the company might need to let's say to prove that such expenses were necessary for the activity of the company. Therefore, it is also important during all phases of business to collect purchase documents and to have to have proofs that certain expenses were incurred, right? But it's I think this is in all countries the same. What is also important maybe that let's say if the company spends have some expenses for the benefit of their shareholders, let's say they prepare the reports for the shareholders, then this would not be considered as allowable deduction, because it would not be related to the business of the company, but to the shareholders. Also, what is important is that some expenses are subject to some limitations. In particular, let's say depreciation of tangible assets. They have to be depreciated over a certain period of time, which is set in our corporate income tax law. So let's say if I buy a laptop which costs 2,000 euros and I consider it as a tangible asset, I can depreciate it in 3 years. So in the first year I can only deduct 1/3 of this value. So I can deduct it over a period of time. The depreciation periods they depend on the group of the asset. Let's say the buildings are depreciated. I think minimum is 10 years. They can also be depreciated over a longer period if you wish. Also, what is quite important and what we get questions about is when the company is obliged to consider certain goods as tangible assets. So the company itself should decide, by the manager of the company should decide the value of the goods from which the goods would be considered as tangible assets. That's one thing. And another thing is that these goods has to be used in the activity of the company for at least 1 year. So from my perspective, of course, it is the easiest to deduct everything at once. I mean, once I buy the laptop, I think I wish to deduct all the costs at the same year. So, but then on the other hand, you should this should be also a reasonable price. So I think around 1,000 or 2,000 euros is okay for this inclusion of the goods to the tangible assets. But it is not particularly set in the law. Representation costs. So only 50% of representation expenses can be deducted, and it has to be less than 2%, or it cannot be more than 2% than annual income of the company. What is considered as the representation is the other topic that if someone has questions, I would be happy to discuss. But it's also important that Lithuanian companies or entities in Lithuania are entitled to carry forward the losses that were incurred, but it can be carried forward for unlimited period of time, but only up to 60% of the losses can be deducted in that year. And there is no loss carry back. So another hot topic is anti-avoidance rules. So the tax authorities are always keen to collect more corporate income tax from the companies, and they want to check if the transactions concluded between the group companies, between the related entities, are done in arm's length principle. Therefore, we have implemented the transfer pricing rules, and each company in Lithuania that has transactions with associated parties, associated companies, should have transfer pricing documentation. If the turnover of that company is more than 2,800,000 euros, 890,000 euros, 89,000 euros. So a bit less than 3 million. But the turnover of the company itself, not the turnover of transactions between the related entities. So more or less, if you are in the business, I mean, you're likely to reach 3 million quite quickly. And if you have transactions with the related entities, you might get in trouble with respect to this transfer pricing. And this relates to also, let's say, if there are goods sold between the entities, if there are loans and many more transactions between these two related parties. Okay. What is also quite important, I think, is to talk about permanent establishments, because the Latvian business might it might be an easy form of doing business in Lithuania, and it, for example, if the Latvian company engages in some construction project in Lithuania, it would likely lead the Latvian company to the permanent establishment in Lithuania if such construction project, if the period of such construction project exceeds 6 months. Also, let's say you are Latvian company, you sell some sort of goods, cosmetics, medicine or whatever, and you want to spread your goods to Lithuania, and you assign another Lithuanian company that would act under your name, and would try to find customers for you in Lithuania. So this would also lead to the situation where such activity of, let's say, other Lithuanian company or an individual might lead to the permanent establishment of Latvian company. And what does it mean, right? What does it mean, the permanent establishment? This means that the income sourced in Lithuania will be subject to corporate income tax of this permanent establishment. Also, also it might be that, let's say, some Latvian company go to Lithuania to provide some services, right? And this may also lead to the situation where the company is considered as a permanent establishment. So it always depends, on case by case basis. But there are, I mean, if you are in construction business in Lithuania, if you are having the agent, or if you provide services in Lithuania, you should always be aware of this, and you should always, I think, check it with the tax consultant whether your activity doesn't trigger this permanent establishment, or let's say maybe before doing the activities you can plan how to do it, that it would be it would not create permanent establishment, and this is sometimes gets really important. There are there are also rules in other countries about these permanent establishments, but for example, in construction, the countries might consider some things differently. Let's say in Lithuania, it is considered that construction project starts when the real works has started. So let's say you dig the ground, and then it is considered as the start of the project. And it lasts until the transfer of acceptance act is signed. So in other countries there are different provisions. So this is something that always need to be taken into account. Not only the activity, what you do, but also how long will you do, and who will perform it. Because if you, as a Latvian company, let's say win some project in Lithuania, and you don't do anything yourself, you just assign some subcontractors to do all the work. So it might still lead you to the permanent establishment, because it depends still what, maybe you will go there and inspect someone what is done, and so there are just different situations and different factors that have to be taken into account all the time. Okay. Another thing is to mention is that we have a withholding tax in Lithuania, which relates to all the payments that are made from Lithuanian entity to foreign entity. So this could be some profit distribution, this could be royalties, this could be interest payments on loans, for example. It's just that there are also some exceptions when these payments are not subject to taxes, but the regulation is changing, and it should be checked on basically in particular case whether some exceptions can be applied for such payments made from, let's say, Latvian subsidiary to Latvian subsidiary in Lithuania to the Latvian mother company. Okay, let's talk about this free economic zone incentive, which has been introduced from 2018 in the very high extent. So the companies establishing in the free economic zone are entitled to the tax relief of corporate income tax for 10 years for a full relief, and then for 6 years for a half of tax. So it didn't took long for very big corporations to notice this, and we have already quite few great examples of multi-million investments, green plant investments in Lithuania. For example, Hella has opened their plant in Kaunas free economic zone. We were glad to assist them in establishing in Lithuania. We did both legal assistance and tax assistance for the company when entering Lithuanian market, and it's actually quite impressive that they were able to open the plant. I think in 8 months they built the whole plant with an office. I mean, in just in the field where there was nothing, no gas, no water, nothing. They opened a brand new plant with all the connections. So it is possible, and there are some criteria to open the company in the free economic zone. So the investment to the fixed assets has to be at least 1 million euros. But if you are building a plant or even the warehouse, I mean, you will reach this quite quickly. So we have these free economic zones in quite a few places. So it's in Marijampolė, Kaunas, Kėdainiai, Panevėžys, Šiauliai, Klaipėda. It is related to integration of regions, and therefore there is no free economic zone in Vilnius. But even for Latvian companies, maybe, let's say, Panevėžys would be an attractive destination because it's close and you can reach it easily. There are a few other reliefs. First one is investment project incentive, which allows you to deduct the costs of fixed assets 2 times. What is important to mention about this relief is that you have to create something new. Let's say you are you produce the milk, and then you decide to extend your activity and produce cheese, and buy machinery, and you can deduct 2 times the cost of such machinery from your profit, from your taxable income. And this incentive is very promoted by the tax administrator. Many companies use it and successfully do it, and is not one of these incentives that the company use and then they kind of in a trap of the tax authorities. So the tax authorities quite positively accept this incentive. The other one is research and development. This incentive is very on the one hand it looks nice, but on the other hand it requires a lot of paperwork. It has to be confirmed by the agency of research and development that a certain project is considered as such, and therefore it raises a lot of questions, and this is a quite difficult one. It also, if it's not that easy to apply and implement it by yourself, you will probably need some consultants to do that. Okay, let's move on. Cryptocurrencies. Maybe it was hot topic and maybe it's not anymore. In Lithuania, there are quite a few good examples of of these crypto businesses, even though the taxation is not very favorable for the cryptocurrencies, the Lithuanian companies were consulting a lot before establishing these cryptocurrency businesses, and they still decided to open and establish their business in Lithuania because they can establish the business somewhere else where there is more favorable tax treatment, but then they will need to establish the whole office in there, because the whole office, the whole resources has to be there. And of course, some of the companies were asking, can we open a company in Switzerland, but everyone will work in Lithuania? And then we said, well, actually you can do this, but you will be still subject to Lithuanian taxation, because you will be considered as a tax resident in Lithuania, because all your resources and all your work is done in Lithuania. So, and it's not only Lithuania tax authorities has the same approach to all the businesses, not only the crypto. But yeah, I don't know. I will not emphasize on this. Yeah. Peļņas. Peļņas. What do you think about Peļņas?
It's the same organization like PayPal, or I think it's like a shell bank. What's for system?
Can you repeat?
My question about Peļņas organization, it's the same organization like a PayPal system or a cryptocurrency. What do you think about it?
Well, Peļņas is the platform for payments.
It's a platform.
It's a platform for payments that many businesses, legit businesses, are using because of the low fees.
Oh.
And usually the medium enterprises have you can go online and you can buy something and you are paying through Peļņas.
Through Peļņas.
Through Peļņas.
Without account.
Without account, just through Peļņas, and for these businesses it's cheaper than to use the bank. Of course. I think the Lithuanian tax authorities, the Peļņas accounts are open for Lithuanian tax authorities as well. So I don't think that there are some hidden, maybe that some schemes from what they do from Latvia.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Personal income tax, as I said, now I will focus on what we have from 2019. So if your salary is less than 120 average monthly salaries, is 20%. If it's above, it's 27. And it's applicable for the 27 is applicable for what is above. This strange amount here, if we convert it to euros, is about 106,000 euros. So it only quite few employees will be subject to this. But over the period of years, this amount will decrease. So in 2020 it will be lower, and in 2021 it will be lower again. And from 2021, if your income is about 55,000 euros, then what is annual income is about 55,000, then you will be subject to this higher rate. I don't include numbers for 2020 and 2021 because we don't know it still how it's gonna be, because this average monthly salary is set every year. Every year is different. Also, Social Security rates from 2019 is 19.5, and if your salary is higher than this 120 average monthly salaries, is 12.52. And for private individuals or private entrepreneurs, the rates are as follows. And what is also very important to mention is, you remember when I was...
How your statistic office count average monthly salary?
It is how the average monthly salary is accounted.
Yes.
This is the question. So it is accounted and set by the state, and it is the state collects all the information, all the statistical information, divides it from
All employees?
all employees.
In Latvia, not similar.
No?
No.
Yeah. So it's all employees. It doesn't depend on the region or something. It all Lithuania all together, and the number is set. You remember I was saying that the subsidiary has to employ the general manager, right? So even there is a Latvian company in Lithuania, and the general manager, and there is only one employee, which is general manager, that doesn't do anything basically. He still has to be employed, and he might only get, let's say, 100 euros per month as his salary, but his taxes should be calculated from a minimum monthly salary, which is 555. So even if the salary is 100 euros, you will pay at least 120 or 130 euros of taxes. So this will be the costs that you won't be able to avoid in any way. And this is minimum social security contributions only. There are some exceptions from this, but they are very, very limited. And one of these exceptions is that, let's say, the person has a A1 certificate confirming that the payment of taxes is in another state. So let's say Latvian director has presents this A1 certificate to the Lithuanian tax authorities that he is tax resident in Latvia. Also, if let's say, okay, this is I will not focus on this because of the time, but as I said about the VAT registration, which might be considered as one of the forms of the business, it is important to mention that there is no threshold for foreign entities. So if Latvian company is selling goods in Lithuania, they will become obliged to VAT registration from first transaction. basically. If you are a distant seller and you sell goods to Lithuania via your website, you are not entitled to charge Lithuanian VAT until your turnover in 12 calendar months reaches 35,000 euros. So if your sales to Lithuania reach 35,000 euros from your website, you will have to register and charge Lithuanian VAT on it. These are the rates of VAT in Lithuania. There are few reduced rates, but yeah, it's not very important, I would say. What is important is that when you are a VAT payer, you not only have to submit the VAT return on the monthly basis, but you also have to submit the invoice registers, where you have to include every invoice, every and each invoice to that report. So even even if the invoices are low in value, you still need to report. And the same requirement is for all the entities. Therefore, the Lithuanian tax authorities collect all the information, and then they cross-check if, let's say, I bought goods from you, so I report that I bought from you, but you also have to report that you sold me. And if this doesn't match, then the tax authorities get a red light and they red flag, and then they start asking questions. I just wanted to once again come back with this tax reform in Lithuania, and there are a few things that must be mentioned. So first of all, in 2018, you see the example of taxation when the salary of the employee is 1,000 euros. Is 1,000 euros on paper. In 2019, all the contracts, all the employment contracts have to be changed, and the salary has to be multiplied by 1.289. This is the imperative provision in the law. And so all the current contracts for all your employees in Lithuanian company has to be changed and increased. But don't be scared. Your tax burden, your cost of labor will not change, and this is why. So you can see that social insurance contributions are reduced significantly for employer. Sorry. So it is reduced from 31.18 to 1.79. But for employee, well, I think there is a little mistake there. But this is for the company, and this is for the individual, for the person. So this decreases and this increases. Also, personal income tax also increases. So at the very end, the cost of labor is exactly the same for the company. It's just that the employee gets the higher salary on paper, but he pays much more taxes.
But actually it was just a split between different budgets, yes?
Absolutely, yes. And I can tell you why. it was a split yeah. The tax burden is absolutely the same, almost the same. Why this was done is to show the employees that that you are paying, that these taxes are paid by you, because until now the taxes, there was a part of employer and the part of employee. Now is basically all on the employee, and now he knows roughly how much taxes he pays. Other thing is that Lithuania want to become more attractive, maybe for investors, and after this reform, Lithuania will appear as a quite low country for these social security payments levied on the company. So what to do is basically you have to multiply the current gross salary by the coefficient and amend employment agreement. We have I could share with you an example of the amendment of the agreement, because you can sign such as like annex, and this should be enough for this change. And the results, of course, is the cost of the employer remains the same, the salary of the employee slightly increases, and this is it. Yeah, and one important thing is also that from 2019 we have a tax amnesty for half a year. The companies that had failed to fulfill their tax obligations will be allowed to do it without any tax consequences. The tricky thing here is that so this provision is in the law of tax administration, but they forgot to change the criminal code. So still, if the violation is above 30,000 euros, the managing director of the company might be subject to criminal liability. And this is still not sorted out, because, well, you might get, in big trouble with this tax amnesty. But if your let's say if your unpaid taxes in Lithuania are lower than 35,000, maybe it's a good time to fulfill your tax obligations. And one of the things why it is good to do it, because is that the fines are increasing. Before or still now, the fines are from 10 to 50% of the unpaid tax, and from 2019 it will be from 50% to 60% of the unpaid tax. So maybe before these changes, it was even worth to take a risk, because the fine of 10% is really small, and the tax authorities like they have this right to decide what kind of fine to impose, and if you cooperate with them, then it's 10%. If you are let's say hiding something, it's usually 50. But now it might get a bit trickier. One of the other things is that should be also mentioned is the Statute of Limitations. So the tax authorities can go 5 years, the current and 5 years back, and check the taxes that were paid on or unpaid that time. And yeah, one more thing, maybe from 2019, the tax authorities will have this new form of kind of distinguishing the taxpayers into reliable and non-reliable. So this is the criteria that the companies should minimum criteria of reliable taxpayer, and these are criteria that most of the companies should comply with, because if they don't comply, let's say the right to participate in public procurement might be limited. So it's quite important. Yep. And I don't know, maybe you have some questions that you would like to ask.
Do you have some license system in Lithuania for accountant?
The question is, do we have license system?
For accountants.
I think we have quite a few. You mean, do you need a license to be an accountant? Anyone. We don't have license for.
And anybody can sign the final statement.
Final statement
Final statement. Financial.
I'm not really sure about this, but I will check it and I will come back to you.
Pirms mēs turpinām jautājumu, šis 15 minūtes ir arī tehniska pauze. Ja kāds grib vienkārši iziet ārā, noiet lejā pakaļ kafijā, paņemt ūdeni, droši to var darīt, bet mēs varam turpināt ar jautājumiem.
Es varu latviski paprasīt? Man ir viens tikai jautājums. Ir tā, ņemam parasto tam OAB, jūs samaksāts 15% nodokļus, ja? Un tagad...
You can translate, no?
Да. Окей. На простом. 15%, ну, просто бизнес, нефть. 15% налога klientam samaksāts, 15% nodokļu samaksāti, viss kārtībā, tagad maksājam dividendi un 4 varianti. Pieram maksājam manam uzņēmumam, nu tam piemēram Excise Latvijā, no Lietuva dibināja uzņēmumu, tur samaksāja 15%, šeit izmaksājot viņi man dividendes, cik procenti paņem naudiņu un kādas te ir UIN, IIN un cik procenti.
Bet tas būs Latvijā.
Jā, uz Latviju. Viņš, nu, es atveru tagad Rīgas LT. Ja?
Jā, bet
nodokļi. Mēs tur samaksājam peļņu, nodokļus no peļņas 15%, pēc tam dividendi man vajag izmaksāt saņemt. Ja? Cik procenti vajag samaksāt? Piemēram, nu, mums bija fiziski persona izmaksājot pagājušā gada 10%. Ja? Ot tagad viņam ir cik? Man 4 variantas. Uz dividenda maksājam Lietuviešiem pilsoniem, Latvijas pilsoniem un Krievijas pilsoniem.
Dividends from OAB, if you pay to SIA, if you pay to Lithuanian resident, if you pay to non-resident, let's say Latvian resident, and if you pay to third parties, natural persons.
After
tax after
yes.
corporate income tax. So basically the question is about withholding and personal income tax.
Personal.
Yeah, so the dividends paid to Latvian company will be free of tax, and
this is an non-resident in Lithuania, natural person like Latvian natural
personal.
Person.
Okay. To natural person, it's 15. Additional, yeah. Non-Lithuanian.
If you're a Lithuanian resident?
If you're a Lithuanian resident, I will check it because there were some changes and.
Which will be in the 2019. Который будет, kurš
Yeah.
būs 19. gada, tāpēc kā, man vajag plānot biznesu.
Yeah. So I will check.
Okay, un Russia. Personal. Russian.
Outside the European Union. Do you have a special rate? No.
No special rate, no. But I will check it because, as I said,
He will come with answer after the lunch break.
Legal entity from Latvia. Legal entity from Latvia has an apartment in Vilnius, for example, for rent, and passive income as rent. Would it be a permanent establishment or not?
legal entity has a flat,
Apartment, yes,
an apartment in
Vilnius for rent.
Vilnius, and will it trigger the permanent establishment? I think it depends on. I wouldn't say so. Yeah.
Var vēl jautājumu, lūdzu?
Jā, droši.
Vai Lietuvas likumdošanā ir definēts termins fiktīvais uzņēmums vai nav? Paldies.
Mantas, do you know under the Lithuanian law what is artificial enterprise? Do you have by definition what is artificial or what should be treated as artificial?
We don't have the definition of artificial enterprise in the law, but every time the tax authorities are considering the substance of the business, and what is implemented in the law is the principle of substance over the form, and then this is when the tax authorities have discretion to check are there assets, are there transactions, are there employees, what are the functions. So it's very broad. I mean, they can assess it by many things.
If there is any other conditions, preconditions to apply 5% of corporate income rates? For example, not only the net income, but some criteria for employee, shareholders, or any others.
I think not only the turnover, but also the not more than 10 employees.
And for shareholders?
For shareholders, no.
Thank you, Mantas.
Thank you, everyone.